Hey there, this is Ross Izzard, and this is the Backcountry Fly Fishing Podcast, where we talk about fly fishing in more interesting places. So this week, as promised, we have an interview with Dave Arnett. Dave is a member of the Douglas County Search and Rescue Team here in Douglas County, Colorado. He's also one of their public information officers. On top of being a pretty hardcore backcountry guy himself, he's climbed the tallest mountain on every continent, including Everest. He's been all over the place. And he's the kind of guy that no matter how much time you spend outside, he's probably going to make you feel like you just started, because he is a wealth of information. He's been doing it for a long time. These days, he keeps busy by giving back, and as part of a search and rescue team, making sure that those of us who enjoy being in the backcountry for fishing or hiking or camping or all of the above stay safe, and that if we get in trouble, there's somebody who's going to be able to come in and save our butts, so to speak. So I have huge respect for search and rescue. I have huge respect for Dave. I really appreciated the conversation. He has a lot to say about how you keep yourself out of these situations to begin with, the equipment that you need to have, what you should do if you do find yourself in a bad situation, and a whole bunch of other stuff related to search and rescue that, to be honest with you, even though I spend a ton of time out there and I do think about what would happen if something went wrong, a lot of this is stuff that I just have never really thought about. And there's some pretty wild stuff. So I hope you enjoy it. I really enjoyed it. I learned a ton, and I came away feeling better than ever about the folks who are tasked with making sure that we're staying safe in the backcountry and that we can all get home to our families at the end of a good day of fishing. So thanks for hopping on. I think you're going to enjoy the conversation with Dave. And without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. All right, so today we're talking with Dave Arnett. Dave is the field director for Douglas County Search and Rescue, which is the local search and rescue team here in Douglas County, where I happen to live. I think most of you know that I live in Castle Rock, even though I spend most of my free time a long way from Castle Rock. And Dave is down here in Douglas County as well, but I know that they get out and about in the mountains helping people out of tough situations as well. So Dave, thanks for joining us.
Gladly. Thanks for the opportunity.
You bet. So I think a lot of us kind of live in a world, we love going into the backcountry. We love getting to these remote places. Sometimes we take some risks to get there. And most of us live in kind of a world where we think that search and rescue is never gonna happen to us. And honestly, it's probably something that most fly fishermen, and maybe arguably most hikers and most backcountry folks in general, just don't really spend a lot of time thinking about. And so I guess I'm curious if you could introduce yourself. Tell us how you got involved in the kind of crazy world of search and rescue and what your day looks like.
Yeah, glad to. Once again, I'm Dave Arnett, and I'm our field director inside Douglas County Search and Rescue. I'm also one of our public information officers. I've been in the team about 8 years now since I retired. I had the opportunity to retire relatively young, and I'd always wanted to try to give back more, and this was a great opportunity, Ross. As far as me personally, just some background. I grew up in a lot flatter land just outside of Ann Arbor, Michigan, where the tallest place around, was an off-ramp. But I began doing alpine mountaineering later in life, and I've had the privilege over time of climbing the tallest mountain on every continent. So, Everest, Denali, Aconcagua, Vincent Massif in Antarctica, different mountains around the world. And that also helped me, get a better awareness of how important preparation is, how important having the right gear, the right training, those kind of things are in this. So why I joined Douglas County Search and Rescue, quite honestly, is, I'd been doing a lot of different things, and I'd seen search and rescue around. I've run the Pikes Peak Marathon multiple times, and I would always see search and rescue out there on the hill. And I thought, what a cool thing to be able to help people when they're in trouble. And I couldn't really join until I retired, because in my corporate role, I was traveling a lot, and you kind of got to be here when your phone goes off, right? And someone needs help. But when I joined, I found out it is just or as much or more rewarding than my corporate career. The opportunity to help someone get home, to help someone on could potentially be, a terrible day, and make it better is just a gift. And if you'd ask our daughters what I did in my corporate career, they would have said, Dad's gone a lot. He travels. When he's home, he's on email and phone. You ask them now, they can tell you exactly what I do. And that's been kind of a cool thing, again, to help people come home when they might not be able to otherwise.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I would imagine that that's a pretty big driver for almost anybody who gets involved in search and rescue. I'm still in my corporate career. I just like to escape sometimes and go up into the mountains. But, so tell me a little bit about tell me about the team. So how many of you are there? How do folks join? What does it look like as far as DCSAR, which is Douglas County Search and Rescue for everybody listening? Tell us a little bit about the team itself.
Sure. So our team was actually formed back in 1998. There's certainly older teams in Colorado, but Douglas County did not have a team up until then. Within Colorado, search and rescue teams are absolutely defined by county. We're also part of the overall Mountain Rescue Association, MRA. So MRA, teams can call for help from other MRA teams if you have a multi-day search, if there's a recovery that becomes technical and needs more bodies or more trained folks, those kind of things. We also help outside of Douglas County, but we're right about 60 people, Ross, and we do that because we're an all volunteer team. Everybody on our team is all volunteer. Nobody gets paid. We never charge. So no matter what the search, no matter what the rescue, no matter how long, where it is, we never charge. And that's a priority for us because we don't want somebody to think, well, if I wait another couple hours, maybe I can solve this problem and I won't have to pay. We want them to know search and rescue is going to come either way and there will not be a charge. So
I mean, you've got a pretty wild background, Dave, if you've climbed the highest mountain on every continent, including Everest. And I like that you said that super casually, like it was no big deal, but it's kind of a big deal, I think. And I think a lot of people, they're getting into the sport for the first time, or maybe they've been doing it for a little while, but they're not, climbing Mount Everest on a regular basis. Does everybody on the team have the same type and level of experience as you, or how is that broken up?
Yeah, no, we're a broad range and a pretty diverse team, both in age demographics, male and female, climbing background versus, different technical backgrounds. Talk about our team for just a sec. So everybody on the team, all, 60-ish type of folks are definitely, boots on the ground. When we search, boots on the ground are what makes that possible. But we've got individual specialty teams as well. So we have an ATV team, and they're certainly boots on the ground as well, but they're very trained in riding out in, Rampart Range trails and other areas where they're pretty technical trails. And we get a lot of missions for dirt bikers or ATV riders that have been out there, ran into a challenge, ATV versus rock, dirt bike versus tree, and things don't turn out well, and they're way back in on trails. And before they can get higher medical help out of that, they have to be gotten out. So having an ATV team is critical for us. We have a canine team. We have multiple dogs in the team, and their individual handlers are actual members on the team, and they're incredibly powerful in terms of capabilities to find people and find that individual scent among a bunch of different scents on the trail. That's a very important thing for us. Drones, or UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, are a key part of our team as well, and that I think is a huge up and comer, Ross, just in terms of their capabilities. With an infrared camera, you can fly over a forest, and look down in between trees and see a person in the dark, when it might take teams a long time to just get close enough to, yell back and forth kind of thing. So drones are a very key capability. I am part of our technical team, which is our kind of over the edge team. So when there's a climber fall, when somebody has an accident and it's kind of treacherous, lower angle, but still very dangerous territory, and it requires ropes and gear, that's what the tech team does.
So let me ask you about the drones. That's actually, I guess it makes sense that you would use those, but I never thought about that. And I certainly didn't realize that you have drones with thermal vision flying around. Tell me a little bit more about that. And I guess by extension, given that you're a volunteer team, how do you buy the stuff you need? Who buys the ATVs and the drones, and where does the tech come from?
Yeah. So, bunch of excellent questions there. To take them one by one, maybe. With our UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles or drones, we've been using them for a handful of years now. But the technology, it's kind of like the early days of the, PC, and I'm absolutely dating myself when I talk about that. But they're just basically different tech every year. They continue to improve in capability, how long they can fly, how smaller they are in terms of being able to carry them and fly to places. That is huge for us. We have multiple drones. We've got multiple drone pilots. It definitely takes training and certification to be able to fly, and there's all kinds of rules around that. But we use them almost every mission where it's an actual search. We use them. Within Douglas County and most counties in Colorado, search and rescue is under the umbrella of the local sheriff's office, and we certainly are here. We're not part of Douglas County Sheriff's Office, but we have an MOU, a memorandum of understanding with them, and we use our drones to help them in evidence searches also. So it's a very powerful capability. Drones can now carry things. You can talk through the drone. So if you're trying to tell a subject out somewhere where to go, where to turn, what to do, you can communicate through them too. So there's more and more capabilities coming up all the time. You're absolutely right. Drones, ATVs, snowmobiles, other things are not free. Our team trucks aren't. We, as a nonprofit, we get funding through a combination of things, Ross. It happens certainly through Douglas County, gives us a certain amount every year, and that kind of keeps us operating. For capital things like new team trucks or new equipment, other things, we use grants. There are some excellent grants out there that we apply to. Community donations are very valuable to us, and they're always welcome. That's not a plug, but we are a nonprofit, and we don't ever charge. And the only way that we make it in terms of our team gear is through that combination of things. I will just add quickly, every Douglas County Search and Rescue member buys their own gear. So I've got all of my own gear that's in my truck all the time. To be there so I can change. And I pay for my own gear. I pay for my own gas. All of our members do. So being part of it, we're basically, paying our own way. But as far as like team ropes, technical gear, medical gear, trucks, ATVs, those kind of things, those tend to come out of, again, county funding, which is once a year, or grants or donations. And we've had some, wonderful donors. We are not a high budget team. We have trucks that are older than my kids, and my kids are out of college. So it's, we definitely do not live on new equipment all the time, but we do everything possible to respond quickly.
Tell me a little bit about like a call. Well, first of all, how many calls do you get a year? And then I'm curious, when the phone rings and you've got to be there, like you said, you've got your stuff in the truck and you're kind of ready to go. Walk me through the process here. Like something comes in and then what happens?
Excellent. I should have added earlier also, Ross. We are a volunteer, but we're a professional volunteer team in the sense. Any new member goes through 9 months of pretty intensive training. And even me as an alpine mountaineer coming in, I went through that same training because we want people to learn how to set anchors in the same way, to tie knots in the same way, to do things in the same way. So we're interchangeable because not everybody's going to be able to respond to a given mission. So we're all volunteers. We train all the time. We, go through our team certification as part of that. So, people have come in that had no climbing background, no wilderness background, and we teach that as part of this 9-month process, and they've got to be approved at multiple points throughout that. So, the folks in the team, I'm really, really proud of everybody. They are highly qualified in this. To your question, let's just take an example. We've got a lost hiker, and they're out, and now it's dark, and they were supposed to be home 4 hours ago. Their partner or child or parent calls 911. Nobody calls us directly. They call 911 usually. The excellent folks at dispatch will go through their line card based on the call, decide, okay, we need search and rescue in this. They will send out a page through an application called Active Alert, and that goes to a small number of us in the team. We have an on-call coordinator that's on 24/7. He or she will talk with dispatch, figure out what's going on, then page out our entire team. So we're on 24/7, Ross. Not everybody can respond to every mission. Our oldest daughter was just wed a couple weekends ago, and if I'd gotten paged out during her wedding, I'm pretty sure if I'd gotten up, I would have been in big trouble. So, we just can't at certain times, and that's why we're a little bit larger team too. But basically, everybody that can responds, and I keep all of my gear in my truck for that reason. I've left from church. I've left from dinner at restaurants, different things multiple times. Having a very patient wife, in my case, is a really powerful thing. She's I always find her ride home first, but she has gone home on her own from multiple places. So it is a very demanding role in that sense. And we don't usually get paged out at 12 o'clock noon on a nice balmy Saturday. It's usually when it's wet, when it's cold, when it's dark, and you had other things going on. So that's part of it. To your question, folks come from wherever they are, which are different places, obviously, in the county, and we will stage close to where the actual mission is. So if it's in Rampart Range, we'll get to the nearest place where we can go in on a trailhead. If it's Castlewood Canyon, we'll get to the closest parking lot to where we need to go in.
But I think you guys, so number one, I've driven by Rampart Range Road probably 100 times, and I see the people doing the dirt bike stuff up there, and that stuff's scary, man. I drive by there on my way to go fishing, but I kind of side-eye those guys, so I'm not surprised to hear that you're up there. That you're up there pretty often. But so give me a sense of how often this happens, Dave. Is it like twice a week? Is it 3 times a week? How often?
So we have, 911 calls that come in, or other asks of us, that it's probably 130 to 150 times a year. Not all of those field, so not all those turn into the team fully being out there multiple hours to multiple days. That's probably closer to I'd say, 75 times a year, right? But we do, and the other thing I should clarify, Douglas County Search and Rescue was relatively unique in Colorado because we, of course, do wilderness, be it dirt biker, ATV, climber, fall, injured or lost, hiker, those kind of, wilderness things. But we also urban search. So picture a child with autism or an older person, grandma or grandpa with dementia, that walks away from a home. They're at risk pretty quickly. Kids, on the ASD spectrum are drawn toward bodies of water. This is, published data. So they're at risk quickly. Older folks walking away from home or a home that are not taking meds with them. And in Colorado's changing weather can get hyperthermic or hypothermic pretty quickly. Both of those categories are very endangered demographics. So we'll search, Highlands Ranch, Ross or Parker, Castle Rock, different, suburban areas, about half of our overall missions, because every life matters. And that's a big part of our county's population and our county's overall, needs.
That's a lot. I know it's probably seasonally concentrated, I would imagine. Although I'm sure you have stuff in the winter, just like you do in the summer, just fewer people out there. But that's a lot. That's a pretty big commitment for you all, especially on a volunteer basis.
It is. It's a big demand, and we just kicked off our new member class that will be with the next nine months. We do that once a year, and quite honestly, I presented in the 2 informational meetings that we had first, and most of my talk was about, be really sure this is what you want, because it's a huge demand. It takes you away from work, from family, and absolutely, family and faith are first. Work is critically important, or else folks can't keep doing this. So, we understand folks can't always go get away, and we don't expect everybody to respond to every mission, but it's definitely draining. And quite honestly, there's wear and tear, not only on your body, but after missions where it turns out to be a recovery rather than a rescue, those take a toll as well. So it's one, where folks get burned out over time. I can't compare it to, law enforcement or EMS where they face this every day, but it definitely takes a toll.
Yeah, and for folks who are listening, recovery rather than rescue means, cases where something bad has happened and that person is not coming home alive, which there have been a few examples of that in Colorado this summer. It happens every year all over the place, unfortunately.
Yeah, excellent point, Ross. We've had a lot more since COVID, and quite honestly, we see folks that decide they want to take their own life will want to go somewhere pretty, and there's a lot of pretty places in Douglas County, certainly throughout Colorado. All of them involve wilderness, and the coroner can't get to. So our responsibility is to go and then help bring that person out. Quite honestly, it's one of the most honorable parts of our job to help bring that person home.
Yeah, I'd imagine it's also one of the hardest.
It is.
There was a story here, I think it was last week or maybe the week before, about a guy here in Colorado about my age, who went and then climbed a mountain not too far from the Brainerd Lake area. Had a bad fall, landed in a tough spot on the side of the mountain, and I know that the teams were working on that, tried really hard to get him down and get him home. He was deceased after the fall, but they couldn't get him, and he's still up there. Man, I got to imagine that that's a pretty tough burden to carry as a team member.
It is tough. I mean, we've had ones, and again, they're all important. Everyone is important, but we've had ones where it's been a multi-day search because, we know somebody's out there, but we don't know where. That one, I respect the choice that was made, and I know that team well, and they're a great team. But to put rescuers too far into harm's way just adds to the problem. It doesn't help solve the problem. So I empathize with the family. It's a tragic, painful thing, and the team hurts by not being able to bring that person home yet as well.
So let me ask you this, Dave. When you are getting a call, I mean, it sounds like you've got a pretty wide variety of stuff. You have folks that are, in emotional distress or having a mental health issue. You have folks who wander away from home, kids or elderly folks. You have people who get lost and, people who fall, people who get injured or stranded. And I'm curious if you had to think about the missions that you brought on over the last, I don't know, let's say the last year, the missions that you went on, I should say. What's the most common kind of scenario that you run into? Is it an injury? Is it a stranding? Is it a lost hiker? What's the most common vein?
Yeah, I think there's probably three, Ross, to your excellent question that I'd categorize. One is, when you talk about urban, we have a lot of kids on, ASD, the autism spectrum, and great kids, but we do a lot of searching again because they're at risk. And there are times we get paged out, and I say paged out because I'm old. Our phones go off; it's an active alert. But there are times we get called out, and we gear up and leave what we're doing, and we'll get 10 miles down the road and find out, oh, he was playing next door. That's a great problem. As long as that child is safe, we would rather have that outcome than anything else. And the quicker we can respond, the smaller the overall radius is. So time, when someone is lost, when someone can't be found, children or older people that may not know where they are, time is really important. Two is lost hikers. I can't tell you how many times we've gone out to Indian Creek because somebody went out for a hike, and 8 hours later, after they had told somebody they were only going to be gone for 1 hour, they're not home, right? So we search there. It's a lot of twisty, turny trails. It's a beautiful place. Highly recommend it, but know where you're going. Carry a map, carry a phone. It doesn't get excellent signal there, but it's really important. We get people that go out and then make a wrong turn, and they're not carrying navigation tools, and that puts them in a situation of being lost 4 hours when they brought a little bottle of water. They didn't bring any extra layers, no extra food, and they may not be trained to be out multiple hours on a trail either. So very common to have hikers that make a wrong turn, and hours later, there's a problem. And I would add, I have the privilege to talk to a lot of kids' classrooms and scouts and older folks that are beginning hiking. Telling somebody where you're going, telling them when you're going and when you expect to be back is just so critical. That has, absolutely saved lives many times for us because somebody knows to call when there's a problem. And then last, we do a lot out in Rampart, as you talked about. They're pretty challenging trails. They're actually known as some of the more technical, challenging, excellent trails around in Rampart Range. But that also means that things happen. So we get a lot of dirt bike and ATV crashes out there. And again, getting them back on these challenging trails to EMS is important.
Yeah, and I mean, not all your missions are in Douglas County either, right? I mean, I think you guys get called out to other stuff. And how does that work? How do they decide which team responds if, like, I fall on the side of a mountain at 12,000 feet and break a leg?
So most often it's where there's been a multi-day search, and we've had that honestly in Douglas County where we've asked other teams to help. So usually on the first day or even two, a given Mountain Rescue Association caliber team won't call someone else in, but after a couple days of hard searching, going through challenging terrain and scrub oak, folks just burn out, right? So getting new folks in to help in that. So there are Colorado statewide coordinators that talk with each other and kind of coordinate this. Again, within Colorado, there's a whole bunch of teams. There's about 50 search and rescue teams. I think 13 of those are MRA, Mountain Rescue Association teams. Douglas County is absolutely one of those. El Paso, Larimer, others. So it's nice to be an MRA team because you can be interchangeable and know that people have a certain level of capability in that. And we'll respond. We've responded for multi-day missing people. We've responded for mountain searches. Avalanche is usually not one because you have such a short time to act on that. They're most often saved by the people right with them. So that kind of training is really important for everybody that is in any kind of possible avalanche terrain. But basically, we get paged out in the same way. We get asked usually to respond the next morning early. It's a multi-hour drive there, and you could be gone a day or more for it.
Yeah, so let me ask you this: we've talked a lot. I mean, we're fly fishers, right? So we get off into places. A lot of times they're streams, but very often in the summer months, they're lakes. And we had some biologists on from Colorado Parks and Wildlife several weeks ago to talk about the fact that they stock all of these high country lakes with these incredible cutthroat trout that are a lot of fun to catch. A lot of those lakes are extremely remote. Some of them are off trail. And so I spend a good chunk of my time bushwhacking. And I'm curious, when somebody is going off to a lake, and maybe it's a remote lake that has a trail to it, maybe it's a lake that doesn't have a trail to it, maybe it's just a stream that happens to be a couple miles off of the nearest trailhead, how do they keep themselves from getting in trouble? I mean, what do they need to carry? What are the steps that they need to take so that we don't have to call you out to save their butts?
Yeah, excellent question. And I could talk for an hour about just this excellent question alone, and I promise I won't. But I think it begins before you ever leave, right? It begins with what we talked about, Ross, which is, have a plan. And once you have a plan, tell somebody. We tell kids to make sure they tell someone, but letting your spouse or your partner know, letting a good friend know, here's where I'm going. I'm going to leave at this time. I expect to be back at this time. My car is going to be at this trailhead. That is really critical and absolutely saves lives. Leaving a note in your car, just on your dash. I always thought, if I leave that, people are going to know they can rob my car. This is Colorado. It's a trailhead. It's not that kind of culture. But it helps us a ton when we get there and know, all right, it's a blue Ford, da-da-da. And we find that we know more from that. We can have canines go right to the door of the car. We've got that car kind of roped off. They can find scent right out of the car. It makes a huge difference in us being able to find someone. In terms of what you take, we talk about Penn Essentials, which I think folks hopefully have probably heard of and can certainly look up. But taking enough food, enough water, having navigation, and to me, navigation can mean multiple things. I'm a fan of paper map and compass, because if you drop those, you can pick them up again and they work. If they run out of battery, it doesn't matter. Not everybody has it. Phones take you a long way. I'm a huge fan of phones. We've had multiple rescues just this year, Ross, where and I'll talk about brands just because they work, not because I'm advocating it, but we had some way down south in a terrible comms area where everybody, three different missions had iPhone 14 or above, which bounces an SOS off a satellite. By doing that, it doesn't matter if you've got, a normal cell type of signal. That went to 911, so it went to dispatch, and they were able to draw coordinates from that communication. We could go right to them. So that, carrying, whether it's an iPhone 14 Plus or Android equivalent or something that has that capability, or like a Garmin InReach kind of thing, incredibly powerful tool. We've been able to bring folks out in a fraction of the time and in much better shape because it helped us find them. So having that kind of an electronic tool is really important. So I'd say definitely taking 10 essentials. And I tell this to kids all the time. You may go out and it's 12 o'clock noon, right? You're going out at lunch and you think, I got hours of light, and you absolutely do. Nobody plans to get lost. Nobody plans to be there after dark, but that's when problems happen. So taking illumination, whether it's headlamp or flashlight or both, it doesn't weigh anything. And it's priceless. Taking some kind of extra layer that you can throw on. Again, this is Colorado, which is a wonderful, beautiful place, and there's nowhere I would rather be. But the weather is a constantly changing thing. And, even a garbage bag, just a rolled up garbage bag that you can put over your head, punch a hole for it there, is going to keep you from getting wet, getting colder. Some capability to build fire is really important. And it's weird talking about that to kids because we don't want to advocate fire here in Colorado, especially this time of year. But if it's a choice between building a fire or getting hypothermia, there's not much of a choice. So knowing how to make a fire, knowing what to do, and it's more than just carrying a lighter and a couple pieces of things to make it happen. You kind of have to take a little training on that, but it's a lifetime skill. The rest of the 10 essentials are also important. I think just carrying a whistle weighs under an ounce, but a whistle can make loud, sustained noise well after you're not able to yell anymore. So, these kind of tools are really powerful. If you add them all up, they're a couple pounds. They're a couple pounds and a fraction of your pack.
Yeah, and so one of the things that you said there, Dave, stands out to me. We did a whole episode actually about the stuff that I carry, which tracks very closely with those 10 essentials, plus a couple of additional items for when I'm going to be bushwhacking around in the forest for a while. But one of the things that we've hit on a few different occasions is you got to know how to use the things. And I think you mentioned that with regard to fire starters, but it's also true for like a map and a compass. I mean, some people go out there, they have an app on their phone they've downloaded, they haven't really ever played with it, they've never looked at a paper map, they don't know how to use a compass, they don't know what declination means. I mean, you get yourself into some situations where you have the right gear, but you don't know how to use it. And so if you're one of those people where you can go to REI or Cabela's or Amazon or whatever and buy this stuff, and then you don't know how the hell to use the stuff, and you just throw it in your backpack and you say, okay, well, Dave told me that I've got all my stuff and so I'm feeling pretty safe. That's not the case. And so where do you go to learn how to do orienteering or how to make a fire or how to build a simple shelter out of a space blanket? Where can folks go to learn how to use this stuff?
Yeah, excellent question. Again, we don't ever recommend brands, but I know REI, as an example, offers excellent classes, and they put in a lot of time, and it's a pretty reasonable price for different disciplines from what I've seen. And you raise an excellent point. I should have talked about it at the time. Definitely map and compass are only good if you know how to use them. And it's a perishable skill too. I know, we train everybody that comes into our team on it, but we retrain every year, because if you're not using it, it's like talking in a different language. You lose bits of that over time. I think REI, there's a lot of online things too. Definitely using your phone, using different map applications. You can learn a lot online. It's a very inexpensive thing. Garmin InReach is designed to be very user-friendly. iPhones are user-friendly. That doesn't mean the first time you use it should be when you're out there. You're absolutely right. Learning it at home or at a place is priceless. So I think the other thing is just absolutely Google or some other search engine can help you and bring you YouTube. I'm throwing out a lot of brand names after I said I wouldn't, but these are all tools, right? So finding the tool that works for you and making time for it is, you're right, absolutely essential.
And you got to do that. I mean, I kind of sometimes I get a little frustrated with folks in the sport, or the sports in the outdoors, I should say, because they skip that step, or they're like opening their InReach in their box, like at the trailhead. They pull up and they pull it out, and they're okay. Well, it's got 60% battery. I'm going to turn it on, throw it in my pack, and I'm good. That's not a good way to handle it. And I think, one of the things that I'm hearing you say, Dave, is that nobody thinks that this is going to happen to them. Everybody thinks that you're going to go have a great, wonderful day outside. You're going to come back with some cool pictures. In our case, with some really cool fish pictures, and it's all going to be fine. But stuff can go pretty wrong pretty quickly in the backcountry, and that, the harder the terrain is, the more remote the location is, the more quickly stuff can go wrong. And you're going to get surprised, and eventually you're going to need that stuff. I haven't needed to make a fire out there. I've never needed to push the SOS button on my Garmin InReach, but I expect that if I do this long enough, I might. That could very much happen to me, and that's don't be the guy who doesn't think that you need medical insurance because you never get sick. It's not a great way to think.
That's an excellent point. If I could just add one more to it, we've had missions where we're trying to find a person, and they may not even know that they're overdue or lost. Right? If you're carrying a phone and it rings, and it's a number you don't know, classically we don't answer. Right? Nobody takes calls from numbers they don't know. If you're in the wilderness and that happens, please answer, because it could be search and rescue calling you because the reporting party, your wife, husband, parent, called it in, and if we can reach you, we can tell you how to get coordinates off your phone. We can send you an actual link that'll send coordinates back to us. We can text, which will take a lot lower power and go in places where voice calls may not. But responding on your phone when you get a call is very important. The other thing I would add is, you Ross, everything you said, I totally agree. The training is so important. And when I've taken classes, I find it's a great opportunity to be around like minds and like hearts. There's cool people taking these trainings that are outdoors people also. And it's a great way just to meet new folks and build bonds too. So beyond just keeping you safe and getting you home more quickly than if you were lost, it's fun as a rule too. So I'd strongly encourage it.
It is fun, and I think the primary appeal of this stuff for me is learning things. I mean, that's why we go to these places. That's why we do this stuff, because you want to experience the places, you want to learn new stuff, and you might as well start doing that before you strap on the boots and hit the trail. All right, so Dave, like I said, I get out there a lot. Spend about 100 days a year off in the middle of nowhere fishing in various places. Let's say I am off trail 2 or 3 miles, going up the side of a mountain, crossing a boulder field, at, I don't know, 12,000 feet above timber, and I slip and my leg shoots down into one of the crevices between the boulders and I break my leg, which is, I believe, probably the most likely bad thing that's going to happen to me on most of my trips. So let's say that happens. Now I'm hurt. I can't get out. I pull out my InReach or whatever device I have and I hit the SOS button. Walk me through the timeline and the process of what happens for me as an angler at that point, or as somebody that needs to be rescued from the time that I hit that button.
Yeah. So good news is you were carrying a Garmin InReach or some other kind of comms that was able to get out from there, right? Just an ordinary phone, whether it's iOS or Android or anything else, may not. So carrying some kind of advanced tool is really important. Hopefully you've also told someone back at home before you ever left where you were going and what your timeline was and those kind of things too. Those are both critical. Once that happens, though, your Garmin InReach in this example is going to bounce that off a satellite. It's going to go in. It's going to eventually make its way through their network to a dispatch person, at a Douglas County Justice Center, if you're in this area, right? They're going to look through their line card. Again, they're going to page search and rescue. Our on-call coordinator is going to respond probably within the first couple minutes of that coming out, day or night. It's a 24/7 kind of thing. And then they're going to spend a few minutes, talking about what's going on, what the information was. Our coordinator, who is one of our, we have 5 folks that rotate through this every month over time because it's a pretty draining thing. They're going to probably reach out to you through your Garmin InReach, if all possible, to have communication on that and understand better where you are, what happened, a bunch of things like that. In parallel, they're going to page everybody out. Right after that, 60 phones are going to go off, and it doesn't matter if it's day or night. Everybody's going to pick up that phone. If they're in town, if they're in any way able to go, they're going to respond that they're on their way, and the coordinator will indicate a place where we're going to be able to meet and go from there. Right. We've got folks that are going to run down to where we keep our team trucks, because those are the actual rescue trucks that have all our gear plus our command post. So they'll drive those out to where we're going to base from. Everybody else is driving out in POVs, their personally owned vehicles to get there. And we'll all converge on that. But I think it's important to keep in mind, this isn't EMS responding to downtown Castle Rock, right? It's not a 5 or 10 minute kind of thing, right? It's going to take a few minutes just to get it underway. It's going to take a few minutes for everybody to change clothes and gear up and get out the door. And then if you're deep in Rampart Range, it may take an hour just to get to base. And then we're going to send out teams, either foot or ATV or both. We will fly a drone overhead, and it could be another hour plus to get to where you are. And first team to find you is going to relay back to either confirm, yep, we need this, and this gear, or what's changed. And then if we brought gear, that's good. If we need to send out other gear, litter and a wheel and med pack, because we found you have a broken leg, as you talked about. So all the medical stuff that we carry, and then we'll begin the process of packaging up and getting you out. And that depends on how bad your injuries are. This year we've had anywhere from folks that we could walk out, to folks that we were able to package up and get to the nearest LZ, the nearest helicopter landing zone, because it was a broken femur and there was a lot of blood loss, and we needed to get them out really quickly. So getting out is a process unto itself, and again can vary from somebody that can actually walk but is just dehydrated or cold, all the way to it is life and death critical. Every minute counts. Let's get flight for life, or one of their peers in here to the nearest place. We can have them touch down.
Yeah, and I'll zoom in on something you said right there with a broken femur or like a compound fracture where you've got blood loss, or you could. I've cut my leg open on stuff when I'm wading in streams. You've got there are a lot of ways you get hurt out there. Carry a med kit with you, and the med kit should include a tourniquet. You'll probably never use it, God willing, you never have to use it, but this is one of those things that you need to have with you. You need to be trained in how to use that thing, because if something ever did happen to you, to Dave's point, it takes a little while. They're pretty fast, it sounds like, but if you're bleeding profusely and you've got a serious problem, you need to have at least basic medical kit with you to be able to deal with that in the meantime. So I'm a big advocate for carrying that stuff, and there are at least entry-level trauma classes all over the place that you could take where you learn how to apply a tourniquet, or you learn how to stem blood flow, or whatever you need to at least be able to hold yourself over until the professionals show up.
That's a really good point, Ross. And actually, I just put up a post yesterday. We teach stop the bleed classes, bleeding control classes. And one of the folks that had taken one of our classes, actually back in 2018, had continued to carry a tourniquet in her car. She came up on a MVA, a motor vehicle accident. It was car versus motorcycle. Major break and injury on the motorcyclist's leg. Because she'd had that training, she pulled that tourniquet out of her car console, ran up, put it on, probably saved his life, right? She got there 7-10 minutes before EMS did, just based on where it was in traffic. So being able to be an immediate responder, not just a first responder, but immediate, based on where you are, whether it's on you yourself or family or someone you haven't ever met, is a priceless thing. But you can only do it if you've got the training and the tools. And definitely taking a class like that, taking a CPR class, these are all valuable things, because the person that you save is probably going to be someone at home or at work or school or church, pick your place, but someone close to you, because you'll be right on scene when it happens.
Yeah, and I want to highlight one other thing that you said, Dave, early on, which is that you never charge for the services. And I think when something happens to you, and this is probably particularly true if you get lost, right? If you get like seriously injured, you probably know you're in big trouble and your ego goes away. But I think, we're outdoors people, outdoorsmen. A lot of us like to think that we're pretty rugged and woodsy and we're not going to get lost and we know where we are. And, or there might be concerns that if you were to call out search and rescue, you're going to get a $2 million bill because they had to come out and get you. And so I think a lot about the fact that some people carry these devices and they don't want to push the button, either because they find it embarrassing or they think they can handle it, or because they think they're going to get charged for it. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about sort of when do you push the button? When are you in trouble and how do you navigate that?
Yeah, excellent question. So again, I think it partly goes back to we're in Colorado, right? We're not in Texas or California, where it's pretty constant weather in some places. Things change here quickly. If you're out overnight, it's going to drop 20, 30 degrees. Hypothermia puts you at significant risk of greater injury quickly. If you are lost, and you'll know you're lost because you don't know where to go, you're not going to solve it, chances are. If you know, okay, I'm going to go back by this tree and then that large cliff over there, then you're probably not lost. But I think when you're lost, call it in. When you are hurt, call it in. We have a lot of things happen where it's a bad outcome because people will leave. Somebody's climbing up a hill, somebody else is a little bit more tired, they're both trying to be polite, they break up. Becoming isolated is a problem, right? So keeping together, bringing the 10 essentials in, and as you said, first aid is absolutely part of that 10. It's critical, it's really important. As far as when do you pull the trigger, when do you push the button, I think sooner than later is really important. I will qualify it with, if you're tired, take a rest. Don't call us because you're tired necessarily. If you're exhausted, again, if you're hypothermic, call, please. But if you're tired, you're going to find that that carry out is a lot more painful than just walking out. So it needs to be real, but don't delay. And that's absolutely why we don't charge. Why we never charge is because we don't want people to delay. There are other places in the country, Northeast. I have counterparts out there I've talked with, and they feel charging is important because they don't want people to just call to get basically Uber out. And folks would only do that once because they realize it's the most painful Uber that you'll ever have. But we would rather come out early. It helps us not to wait till it's dark. It helps us not to wait till you're already in a lot of pain and can't walk. If we can get to you early, that's a positive thing. Again, if you're just tired, drink, eat, and keep doing that all the way through. Throw on a layer when you're cold, take off a layer when you're warming up. Do things in anticipation. And if you can work through it, great. But if you're injured, if you're lost, act on it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and when you're in trouble, right? I mean, I feel like most folks, and if you don't know when you're in trouble, then I might make the argument that you need a little bit more training and you ought to be out there with somebody a little bit more experienced. But once you I do a lot of solo stuff. I know when I'm okay. I know when I'm on the verge of not being okay. And while I've never had to push the button before, when the time comes, I'd like to think that I would know and just let go of your ego. You're not going to get charged, like Dave said. And the alternative is pretty scary. I mean, you hear stories a lot about folks who wait too long. They get stuck on the side of a mountain overnight. It's cold. They don't know how to build a shelter. They don't have food. You don't want to do that. It's in addition to being dangerous, even if you get out, you're not going to have a very good time. So if you're in trouble, call for help. There's no shame in it. Okay, so Dave, different example. Let's say I didn't break my leg, but I wandered off the trail. I didn't know how to read my map. I lost my compass. I broke my phone or didn't have the stuff that I needed, and now I'm hopelessly lost somewhere in the forest. Then I pull out my device. I hit the button. You guys get the call. You're on the way out to stage and come and get me. You may know exactly where I am depending on the device. You might not. What should I do as an angler or as a hiker at this point? What do I do? What do I not do?
Yeah. Excellent question. We want you as an adult to do the same thing we want kids to do, hug a tree, right? And you don't have to actually hug a tree. They're all great, but it's keeping in one place is really essential, right? We want you going in again to do everything that we talked about, which is tell someone where you're going, when you expect to be back, so they can call it in for you. If you don't have a button to push, if your Garmin inReach dropped on a rock and broke, we want somebody to be able to know. Ross has been out 4 more hours than I thought. This is a problem, right? And we can help before it gets worse. But definitely when you're going to be out there, thinking about shelter and thinking about warmth are both really important, right? So you can definitely build, a rough shelter that's going to keep you kind of dry with branches, putting on layers, taking off layers, both in anticipation of getting cold or getting warm is really important. If you've brought the 10 essentials and you've brought enough water and you've brought enough food, you can last a long time if you have things to keep you warm. So taking a breath, taking a pause, looking around, figuring out where you are is really essential. Where folks get into trouble is, hey, if I can just head downhill, there's probably water there. There's probably other things. No, I mean, downhill is always easier, but it's not going to make it easier for you to get out. So keeping where you are, if you're in a place that is, safe, is important. If you keep on moving around, it just makes it tougher to find you. And you may get into worse spots. You may head down a path where you get cliffed out. You may get caught in challenging brush. And then also, keeping visible if at all possible. If it's, raining or snowing, keeping at the edge of a clearing where you're covered up but can be seen as important. And again, if you don't have a whistle on your pack right now, go put one on it right now. It can absolutely save your life. And it weighs nothing, but it can be heard so much further. Carrying a 2x2 mirror is a priceless thing. There's so many things that can help you, be rescued faster. Most of all, quit moving around, take a breath, take a pause.
Yeah, there was another story, and I'm sure this is more complicated than it sounds, but here in Colorado about somebody who went on a religious experience of some kind and wandered off, got herself lost. She was rescued in the end, so thankfully she was okay. But one of the conversations that was in the news that was had with the search and rescue team was, well, why were you like hiding underneath a bunch of trees when we were looking for you from the air? So yeah, I mean, being visible. So we talked a couple episodes ago about wearing bright colors. You can carry one of those Mylar space blankets that are very reflective. They weigh nothing. They pack down to almost nothing. They can actually keep you pretty warm if you need them to. But yeah, and having a fire starter, right? I mean, I would imagine that if you don't know exactly where they are, being able to put together some kind of a signal there might help as well, in addition to helping you stay warm if you were in big trouble. So having the stuff you need, again, is kind of the key ingredient.
Yeah. And again, if you've got your phone, if you've got your device, if it goes off, if you get something coming in, answer that, please, because chances are it is us, and we can send you a link to get your coordinates or walk you through how to send coordinates, and that gets you out so much faster. It's absolutely your friend, but you have to answer for that to work.
Yeah, and if you hear your voice coming from the sky, I guess it might be one of your drones. I still think that's that's kind of crazy.
They're cool things, and it's only gonna play a role more and more and more. We had a rescue the other day, right here inside Castle Rock. I'm in Castle Rock also. It was down on Plum Creek, and it was a guy that had ended up in a big patch of scrub oak and willows. He'd been there a couple days, and our drone and our team found him. And we've got this great shot of hands kind of reaching across the subjects and our first guy to him through this really dense brush. So yeah, it's a really powerful thing.
Wow, and he just got kind of stuck in there, like he was just pinned in there with the vegetation, or what happened?
Yeah, it's a longer conversation how he got there, but the important thing is getting him out was made easier by great folks on foot and a drone.
Yeah, no, I would imagine and keep that in mind too, that, I mean, the drones I'm sure are incredibly helpful, but eventually people are going to have to kind of hike in and get you. So when you are, or fly in a helicopter and grab you. And one of the things that I think about whenever I'm doing stuff, especially off trail stuff at higher elevations, is I am mentally marking out, at least in my mind, and sometimes actually on the app that I use, which is Arnett backcountry. I'm happy to share that because they're not paying me for it. I just love the app. I'm thinking about places where somebody could make an approach or where a helicopter could land if something were horribly wrong. Because places that don't have trails, there's no information about it. And when the rescue team contacts you, they're probably going to be curious to know how you got there, what route you took, if there's some place where you could meet them or where you could be picked up. Don't just do the heads down hiker thing where you're staring at the ground the whole time and thinking about where you're going. Pay attention to where you are, because those mental notes that you're taking, those might be the difference for you later on if somebody has to hike up.
That's a great point, Ross. Certainly not only looking forward, but looking up and looking back where you came, because that's the view that you'll have going out is really essential.
Yeah, that's right. And that view is often a lot different on the way down than it is on the way up. I totally understand how people get lost because it just does not look the same from a different angle. Okay, so Dave, if somebody wanted to do this crazy search and rescue thing, if they wanted to sign up for it, they sit through your training session where you try to talk them out of it, and they decide they really, really want to do it, which, by the way, I would like to do it. I just worry that I don't have the time, so I might have to wait. I might have to wait for a while. But let's say that they do want to do it. How do they do it? How do they take the first step, and how do they go down the road of getting onto a SAR team or getting involved with the SAR team?
Absolutely. And I can talk about Douglas County. Different teams have different ways, different times a year, but most teams will have a new member class every year. And they may have it, multiple times a week where they train in a shorter period. Ours is a 9-month training, and that includes 5 very full trainings every month, plus a bunch more and offline stuff. But we our website, if you just look for DCSAR CO as in Colorado.org. You can see our website. So again, Douglas County Search and Rescue Colorado, DCSARCO.org. There's a place there where there's a volunteer tab. You can click on that little form you can fill out, just name and phone number, email address. That'll come to me, to my SAR inbox, and I'll send you information on it. We do info meetings in August. We kick off our class in September. So our brand new class of wonderful folks is going to be going for almost 9 months from now, basically. And we won't take another new class till next year in that same time frame. But we generally do it once a year. Your point, Ross, about life is full. Man, I looked at SAR years and years before I actually joined and went to an info meeting. And the guy that was talking at the time made me realize, I'm on the road 3 weeks out of 4. This isn't the right time for me. And we totally get that. We don't want to push people into it. We want it to be when it's the right time, because if you can't respond when your phone goes off, that's a problem, right? This is joined to be able to help bring people home that might not get home otherwise. And having enough bandwidth and being in a position to make the commitment to that is what we want. That's the most important thing. We can, teach everything else, but being able to make that commitment to time and to respond is job 1, 2, and 3, really. So, for us, you can just reach out through that. We also have a Facebook page, and we post up there almost every day with different things, either missions or training or some tips and tricks on wilderness safety or winter safety. You can respond through that over Facebook Messenger. And so different ways. But again, if that's Douglas County, if you're in El Paso or Larimer or, different places, they're going to have a different process, but just look up your, local, organization. I will say, if you guys don't already know, there are a bunch of different Douglas counties inside North America. I don't know, 5 or 6 anyway. So make sure that you're reaching out to the right team. But if you do DCSAR, or DCSARCO.org, that'll go to us.
Yeah, and we should mention, so even if you're not in Colorado, because I know quite a few of our listeners aren't, you're going to have search and rescue teams probably in your county, wherever you are. Every state's a little bit different, but it's probably not that different. So the same basic process is probably the same way that I would imagine that you'd start to go down that road, wherever you happen to be.
Yeah. And there really is no Denver proper search and rescue team because it's a hub and it's an infrastructure kind of thing. So it just depends on where. I will say for folks, if you're not in Douglas County, but you're like half an hour out, we get a lot of interest that way. A lot of times it's just too far out. We want people to be in a position where they can respond relatively quickly. So being in the county is important to that.
So Dave, what if somebody decides, they don't have time for it, they can't be on the team, they can't do the training regimen, or they're not available for the calls when they come in, but they would still like to help. Maybe they'd still like to volunteer, maybe they'd like to donate. How could somebody do that if they're not in a place to do SAR fully, but they'd still like to help you out?
Yeah, that is a wonderful question. Thank you. A couple thoughts on that. One is we definitely welcome donations. We are a 501c3, and again, you can go to our website DCSARCO.org, and there's a donate tab there. And I'm not an expert on it, but there's a bunch of different options there. If you're interested in just helping out, we're putting a new role in place in the team where it's folks that, may not want to or may not be able to pack up a hill and carry someone down, but they'd like to help do fundraising or, organizational type of things. So we're creating a new category of member for that. It's just kicking off this year. So if you're interested in that, you can go to that same volunteer tab and fill out the information and add a comment there, and it'll give you an email address you can send, added comments to if you want. So that would, love to have those conversations also. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, and I think Dave is too diplomatic to ask you to make a donation, but if I ever get in trouble, I want to make sure that they've got the ATVs and the drones. So I'm probably going to do that. And if you're so inclined and have the resources for your local search and rescue team, they get a little bit of help and funding from the state agencies, or from the local agencies, I should say. And there are some additional fees scattered around here and there that eventually trickle their way through to the teams. But, direct funding from folks who are out in the backcountry and interested in supporting the folks that might save your life one day, it's not a bad thing to think about. So keep that in mind.
Absolutely agree.
Well, Dave, I so appreciate you guys. I hope very much that I never have to call you, but I love knowing that you're there. I think about search and rescue teams often when I'm out there doing this backcountry fly fishing thing. And like I said, I hope I never get there, but I feel a lot better knowing that if I did, we've got well-trained and very, very dedicated people on teams like yours who are ready to come up and save my butt off the side of a mountain. So thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you. We are absolutely here to serve, and it's a privilege. We get to cross paths with a lot of wonderful folks. We would much rather meet them not in a cold, dark forest when everything hurts. So absolutely.
Yeah, I suspect they would prefer that too. But man, we're grateful for you. So thanks for everything you do, and thanks for hopping on with me today.
Cool. Thank you. Have a great day.
Okay, that'll do for today. We've been talking to Dave Arnett from the Douglas County Search and Rescue Team here in Douglas County, Colorado. Keep in mind, you might not be in Colorado. You could be somewhere else, wherever else you might be, but you have a search and rescue team almost certainly. And anytime that you are out in the backcountry, it pays to know at least a little bit about how those teams operate, where they are, how you contact them if you get yourself in trouble, and then, what you do if you happen to get into a bad situation. So wherever you are, remember that safety has to come first. If you can avoid putting yourself in a bad situation through training or having the right equipment or bringing someone with you or making better choices, going back to those guiding principles we talked about this season, you should do that. It's better not to get yourself in trouble in the first place. But if you do, God forbid, it's good to know what to do. And it's good to know that guys like Dave are out there to come in and get you if you're in a real tough spot. So for now, I hope that you came away learning a lot about an area of backcountry experience and backcountry work that a lot of folks know about but don't think about deeply. And I hope you can come away with a big, bold underscore on the idea that you want to really stay safe out there, which is what I want for you and what Dave wants for you. So make good choices, have fun, get out there. You've still got a little bit of time before the fall closes out and stuff starts getting really cold for us. But I hope you have a great week. We'll see you soon. Until next time, this is Ross. Maybe I'll see you out there. But I hope not.